Okay, let's get it. Black girl magic dripping. Yeah, she's on a mission. Keeping our culture lifted. Now you can watch and listen. And Tammi Mac. Oh, what show is that? It's the Tammi Mac Show on Fox. So, Tammi Mac, Tammi Mac, yeah. Who that? Tammi Mac, hey. So you know it's Tammi Mac, hey. Tammi Mac.
Welcome to the Tammi Mac Late Show. I am Dominique Diprima. I'm filling in for Tammi Mac. I am one of the co-hosts on this amazing Friday show. Tonight, we're talking about President Biden's minimum wage proposal, the banning of menthol cigarettes, and power couple Sierra and Russell Wilson encouraging students about the importance of financial literacy. It's Friday. That means it's time for another round of the political and trending highlights of the week. Please welcome Tammy's Friday co-host, the co-founder of the Anti-Racism Kentucky Coalition, Dr. O.J. Oleka, comedian and filmmaker Alycia Cooper, and political analyst Ed Sanders. President Joe Biden recently addressed Congress for his first 100 days about several issues affecting Americans, including raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Let's take a look at the clip.
Raise the minimum wage to $15. No one working 40 hours a week. No one working 40 hours a week should live below the poverty line.
Will the $15 an hour minimum wage survive President Biden's relief bill? What are the benefits? What are the consequences for workers and for small businesses of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour? You know I'm going to start with you on that one, Dr. O.J. Oleka.
Well, yes, I expected that I would be first on this. And really the question is, has Joe Biden, in the last 45 years or however long he's been involved in government, ever worked for minimum wage? Because if he had, he would know that this is a very difficult thing for small businesses. If you run a small business, a small company, you know how hard it is to find workers, to find people who will work for you. And every dollar that you increase the minimum that you can hire somebody, the more you make it more difficult for people to actually be employed. And the challenge here is that it's not that you don't want to pay people more. It's that if you do, then you can hire less people. You put small businesses in a position where they're going to go out of work if you actually increase the minimum wage. So to answer your question directly, no, I don't think this survives. Actually, the final bill, I don't think it makes it to the cutting room floor. And two, this would be very difficult, very challenging for small businesses, as every state is different. The cost of living is different in Kentucky than it is in California. And so asking businesses to pay what they pay in California to pay in Kentucky would put a lot of folks out of work.
Well,
Go ahead, Alycia.
everybody always wants to talk about small businesses, but nobody ever talks about these big corporations. If this country had kept up with the cost of living and inflation, minimum wage should be at $22 an hour by now. And I hear what you're saying, Dr. Oleka, about the small businesses, but that's why I think we should have minimum wage on a sliding scale. Walmart shouldn't play the same thing as a mom and pop. It just doesn't make any sense. And people can keep using small businesses as a crutch for why nobody should have a living wage. But the companies that are making billions of dollars and the CEOs are buying a third private jet and $5,000 gold shower curtains, it makes no sense. So I feel like there's a better way to do this minimum wage thing. It shouldn't be a one size fits all.
Or maybe it is $15 an hour so the workers don't have to make up the difference. Maybe there need to be subsidies for those small businesses. We've seen those Republican doom and gloom predictions about a $15 minimum wage before in San Francisco and Seattle. But in reality, the jobs didn't go away. What are your thoughts on that, Ed?
Yeah, no, I don't think we've seen significant job loss when you raise the minimum wage. I think it's quite the opposite. What you end up getting is a more energized and engaged workforce, which actually leads to more productivity. And that's actually what's more beneficial to a small business. When you can have an employee that's more motivated to do the work, it's just a bonus for your company. Whether or not it survives, I think comes down to politics, right? This is a highly popular populist proposal. With anything like that, you can expect that there will be some Republican obstructionism and slowing down the pace of this.
But the reality is, in most cities and really most places in America, if you're not making 15 bucks an hour, it's hard to raise a family on the minimum wage with just one job. The Biden administration now expected to announce a plan to ban menthol cigarettes. This action was sought by anti-tobacco supporters and civil rights groups that say African Americans are disproportionately targeted and hurt by the industry's advertising to Black communities. I'm going to go to Ed on this because I know this is something that you personally have worked on. What do you think the reaction is from the Black community? And do you think this is signaling maybe heavier focus on going after products and industries that target African Americans?
I mean, look, as the last couple of years have showed us, we are dealing with and having a much more robust conversation about institutional racism and sort of the lasting impacts of Jim Crow. When we look at menthol cigarettes, this is an important health imperative. You've got a major U.S. industry that created a product that is more addictive and leads to worse health outcomes. And that product has been targeted at the African-American community for decades. It is the right thing to do is to remove menthol flavored cigarettes from the market. The objections to it, are rooted in sort of false narratives around what could happen, what might happen, sort of this concept of unintended consequences. The truth of the matter is where menthol has been removed from the market, half the people quit smoking and the other half just switched to regular brand tobacco. But the bottom line is the tobacco industry has used menthol as a flavor additive to increase addiction at early age. And ultimately, that's what we're talking about is stopping people from smoking at an early age and going forward.
Alycia, comics joke about Colt 45 and menthol. But is this a freedom of choice issue where we should be able to smoke whatever we want to smoke and drink whatever we want to drink? Or is this actually, a targeting of Black communities for more toxic products?
Well, yeah, I do think it's a targeting of the community. And like you said, once you have all the information, if you still choose to drink and smoke, nobody can really do much about that, but it's a very serious thing. My mom was one of the younger smokers and she ended up with congestive heart failure and a triple bypass due to this kind of smoking. And she didn't have the information when she first started smoking. So I feel like if you get all the information and you still want to do it, I mean, there's not much I can say about it, but at least inform the consumer so they can make an educated decision first. Because I feel like the more people know, the less they'll want to smoke a menthol cigarette. I've never smoked.
Dr. OJ, your organization is about anti-racism, and yet maybe Republicans will say this is an example of the nanny state. Where do you fall on this?
Well, it's actually very difficult for me regarding the politics of it and the philosophy of it, because I'm actually with my colleagues on this. I think this is good to ban this type of behavior, to ban this type of particular flavor because of the emphasis that it has within the Black community. But admittedly, this is going against the idea of liberty, going against the idea that individuals can choose to smoke or drink whatever they would like. But to me, I look at this simply as this is targeting the Black community. It is bad. This is not positive. There's no good benefit, in my opinion, to smoking cigarettes and to smoking menthol cigarettes. And I say this as a Kentuckian. Tobacco is one of our main products as an exporter, but this is simply not good. And quite frankly, I look at this from a different perspective that I'm concerned about, that if you were to ban this product, then I'm concerned about what a Black market might look like, what something might look like with regard to how police could enforce this. And again, it creates an opportunity where there could be a clash between the Black community and police officers. Again, I think that's a separate issue, but it's something that we should be concerned about pushing forward on this particular policy.
Well, police don't need cigarette laws to clash with the Black community, as we've seen. But your point is taken. I guess we could see Eric Garner, the menthol version, which would be all bad. I do think that, we limit how fast people drive on the roads. I mean, you can't do anything you want in America. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can't go 100 miles an hour in a school zone. So we do things to protect people's safety. And maybe this is simply one of those.
Dominique, it's really important to understand on that issue that we're talking about a major U.S. industry that has created a product that is more dangerous and is targeting that product at our community. And when you understand that that is what we're looking at, this is a really simple proposition. The concept of sort of the increased police interactions is a false flag. The truth of the matter is you're seeing these interactions now. And Eric Garner may be an outlier, but even a George Floyd was walking into a liquor store to buy a pack of cigarettes. The cigarettes are sort of germane to the issue, or not germane to the issue. The real issue is we're talking about police accountability and police oppression on that, and we shouldn't conflate that issue and try to protect the tobacco industry behind some fear of police aggression.
Let's have our soulmates weigh in. T. Kelly on YouTube says that, now they're worried about our health. Okay. And on the issue of the minimum wage, Spark says the USA economics is below China. So many bad decisions, already American business and finance. T. Kelly said $15 does nothing for you in San Francisco. And Kim Possible says, this makes sense with a sliding scale. Yeah, Walmart should be paying more than a small business. Thank you to all of our soulmates. We appreciate your commentary. Let's keep it coming. Laura Italiano, this is a reporter from the New York Post. She's resigned after she wrote a false story that stated that Vice President Kamala Harris was giving her book to children who crossed the U.S. and Mexican border on the government dime, on the taxpayers' dime. Italiano announced her resignation on Twitter by saying, the Kamala Harris story, an incorrect story that I was ordered to write and which I failed to push back hard enough against, was my breaking point. It's been a privilege to cover the city of New York for its liveliest, wittiest tabloid, a paper filled with reporters and editors I admire deeply and hold as friends. I'm sad to leave. What is the deal here? Is this about supporting Trump, or is this about targeting the vice president simply because she is a woman of color? Dr. O.J. Oleka.
Well, actually, respectfully, I think that it's neither. I think that this is simply a news outlet that decided that once they figured out that the story they were pushing was false, you had a journalist who decided that she wanted to resign because she didn't like telling fake news. I wish that the New York Times and the Washington Post had the same reporters who had the same journalistic integrity as the New York Post.
You know, that's a stretch, Dr. Oleka. The New York Times and the Washington Post. The New York Times and the Washington Post are well resourced. The New York Post
the New York Times and the Washington Post are well biased.
It's in along the lines of a National Enquirer. So that's just not, that's comparing apples to oranges.
No, Dominique, again, that's simply not true in terms of the New York Times.
Read the New York Post. Okay.
I read the New York Post. I read the Washington Times. I read the New York Times.
It's owned by Rupert Murdoch, by the way, who is a big Trump supporter and has a far right-wing agenda.
Again, the difference between those particular papers and the New York Post is the admittance of their bias. The New York Times and the Washington Post, if you look at their reporters, if you look at their Twitter feed, have a very clear bias with regard to Democrat, liberal, and leftist policies. There's nothing wrong with an individual who clearly has an opinion having an opinion. The challenge, though, is if you report on that opinion in your news as a journalist that has a particular bent, that's the problem. And so then you push stories like, quote unquote, Russia collusion, or you push stories with the Trump White House with, quote unquote, is the president well or unwell, but then you don't do the same thing with President Biden, who is basically 115 years old and fell up the stairs. That's where you start to have journalistic integrity questioned. And so my point is this: if the New York Post makes a change, then I wish the New York Times and the Washington Post would do the same thing.
Well, I think you're comparing apples and oranges. Alicia, I want to go to you, but I do want to say this. I think it's pretty clear the New York Post knew this story was false when they published it. There's no evidence whatsoever that the vice president's book was being given away to migrant children. Alicia, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I don't, with the whole, she has so much journalistic integrity. I think if she had journalistic integrity, she would have never taken a job there. And if she did have journalistic integrity, why didn't she resign prior to putting out a story that she knew was false and was going to be fact checked and going to make them look even worse? She knew that she was putting out a story like that. And that's why I think the journalistic integrity part is questionable.
Look, I agree with both of you in this regard. I think there is an issue, and what this story calls into question is journalistic integrity, period. I think with the increase in the number of news outlets, there's this desire and chase for eyeballs on stories. You're going to get more and more of that. This one was just obviously false, but to even all of the soulmates that read newspapers or watching news shows, what's important to note is that you should digest it and then do your research on the issue before just accepting a story as being true. Shows like this, the Tammi Mack Show on Friday nights, allow you to distill issues and
All right,
we're all truth,
right,
baby,
right
on this
here.
channel.
As Tammi would say, hold that thought. If we think the vice president is not being targeted as the first African-American, first Asian-American vice president, I think we're living in a fairy tale land. But look, when we come back, we will continue our conversation with political and trending highlights of the week. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tammi Mack Late Show. If you want to see more of this Fox Soul content, subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure you click that notification bell to get all the best updates, new videos, as well as those live shows. And don't forget to hit the thumbs up and tell us how you feel in the comments section. Love to hear from you. If you're just joining us, I'm Dominique Diprima, filling in for Tammi Mack tonight, and we're breaking down the political highlights of the week as we do on Friday nights. Here with me, my fellow Friday co-hosts, Dr. O.J. Oleka, Alycia Cooper, and Ed Sanders. Welcome back, guys. Well, Pfizer is one of the leading vaccine companies, and they've announced a COVID antiviral pill. It could be ready for distribution as early as this year. All the researchers have confirmed that if Pfizer's antiviral drug is approved for use, then it can be prescribed and taken at the first sign of COVID infection, even if a patient is not hospitalized. Is this a game changer? Will it encourage more people to jump on board? Alycia.
Well, that sounds like the COVID morning after pill. This is great. I'm gonna keep me a whole box of them suckers because you never know when you're gonna need them. I think it's a great idea. I think it also makes people a little calm because everybody's just so uptight about this COVID thing, especially the anti-vaxxers. So I think it's a great idea. Anything that could possibly help is a good idea. And I would take it if I felt like I had symptoms and it was available to me.
Dr. Oleka, Republicans seem to be the ones that are hesitant now to take the vaccine. Will this make a difference, do you think?
Well, I think there are a number of different people who are hesitant to take the vaccine. I'd point to Leader McConnell, of course, who is the Republican leader in the United States Senate, who is pro-vaccine. There are a lot of Republicans who are pro-vaccine. I hope that this pill encourages people to either get vaccinated or to believe in the medical breakthroughs with regard to Pfizer and some of the other companies that have put forward a vaccine on this issue, and also this pill. This is a game changer. This is the exact type of thing that we need to get back to normal, to open up the economy and to make sure that livelihoods can get back on track in this country.
Ed, what did you think when you heard the news of a COVID pill?
I kind of chuckled a little bit. Whether or not the pill comes out or not, I am quickly getting to this point where, the vaccine is available. And the more that the vaccine is available, I think the more the country should start to open up. And I leave it to individuals. If you want to take the vaccine, take the vaccine. It's widely available. But if you get ill, I don't want to live my life on the chance that you can get ill. I think this pill is helpful for states and the federal government in terms of medical costs, because for people that don't get vaccinated and get ill, it sounds like this will curb some of the high cost treatments that are necessary. And I think that's a good thing for our state budgets and for the federal budget in general. And we can start to devote resources back towards, things that are important like education.
And if you think about it, a lot of these closures are due to hospital capacity. So if we have a pill that keeps people out of the hospital, then, one could suppose that maybe we wouldn't have as many closures. The CDC recently announced that fully vaccinated people don't have to wear masks when they're outside, as long as they're in smaller groups. Of course, you can't go to that big concert. But is this meant to say something about the effectiveness of the vaccine, or is this just a kind of low-key way to push for faster reopening of our country, Ed?
I think it's a little bit of everything. But listen, if you've got the vaccine or you've been vaccinated and the risk of you becoming ill is less, then yeah, certainly you can start to gather. I mean, that was one of the motivating factors for me to get vaccinated. Is I want to be able to celebrate July 4th. I want to be able to celebrate holidays with my family. I certainly want to be able to go and see the Lakers win another championship. And so if getting vaccinated would help that process along, I'm more than for it. Now, whether or not I have to wear a mask, I can understand some of the role modeling that you want to have for people to see people in a mask. But if the risk of me transmitting or capturing or carrying the virus is low, there's no need to wear the mask, and we can get back. And that's really what we're trying to get towards is back, to the American way of life.
Dr. O.J. Oleka, what was your reaction when the CDC relaxed the mask requirements for people with vaccinations?
Well, my reaction was relief. Again, this week it is Kentucky Derby week in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, where I am from. I was at the track today, as a matter of fact, fully vaccinated, and I was pleased to see that a number of folks who are also fully vaccinated weren't wearing masks. I think when Ed talks about role modeling, the last thing that we want to role model is that if you get a vaccination, that you also still have to wear a mask, because then it shows that you don't have a whole lot of confidence in the vaccine. So I think this is fantastic. I think it shows people that the vaccine works, that modern medical science is good, and that once you get a vaccine, you can go about your business and go about your day. And as Ed said, get back to the American way. Now, we might have a difference of opinion on the team that should win the championship in the NBA, but at least we both want to see people there in person when they play the games.
Well, and to be clear, the CDC is not saying take off your mask and have at it, do what you like. No, they're saying in certain situations, if you're outside and you're in a small group or you're in a group of vaccinated people, or even a mixed group, if it's not too big of a crowd, you don't have to wear a mask. Most of the time, the guidance is keep the mask on. Your thoughts, Alycia?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I want to go out. I want to get my life back. I want to not wear a mask as often as I don't have to. I'm getting my second shot next month. I'm going to see Hall and Oates at the Hollywood Bowl. I'm not going for Hall. I'm going for Oates. And I'm planning on having a good time. So as soon as we can get back to normalcy, I need it. So I was happy to read that. I was happy to hear that. And I hope that it causes more people to get fully vaccinated.
Hey, like if you're single like me, it's great news for possible dating life too. That's
right. You can't even tell who look good nowadays. They got the whole face covered. How you gonna find a handsome man with eyeballs? You're just looking at eyeballs. You're trying to see what you want to see, right, Dominique?
That's a great point. Soulmates weighing in. Kim Possible says COVID after pill. Oh my God, while Alycia is hilarious, true that. And Cobb says people who are hesitant to take the vaccine are largely doing so because there isn't well-documented history of long-term side effects. Folks don't want to be a guinea pig. They want a sure thing. That's true. But one really bad side effect of not taking the vaccine could be death. And that probably trumps some of the other side effects people might be worrying about. LaKandra Foster on YouTube says there are two sides to reporting: the ones who get the information and the ones who report the information. Well said. Appreciate you, soulmates. You can weigh in too. You can be a soulmate. We're all soulmates around here. Just give us your thoughts and opinions on YouTube. Love to hear from you anytime, all the time. We're going to take a break. When we get back, well, some information about the Ahmaud Arbery case and hate crime charges in that case. Don't go away. Welcome back. I'm Dominique Diprima in for Tammi Mack. On Wednesday, a federal grand jury in the Southern District of Georgia charged Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael, and William Bryan with hate crimes and the attempted kidnapping of Ahmaud Arbery. The McMichael's attorney, Robert G. Rubin, told Newsweek there's absolutely nothing in the indictment that identifies how this is a federal hate crime, and it ignores without apology that Georgia law allows a citizen to detain a person committing burglaries until police arrive. Lots to unpack on this one. What are your thoughts, Dr. OJ? I mean, this is a hate crime charge. This is relatively rare, but it looks like the feds are going to be pretty aggressive here. We're hearing about the possibility of charges, federal charges coming down against Derek Chauvin and those other three officers as well.
Well, it's rare. It is aggressive, and quite frankly, it should be. This is, I mean, for a number of reasons. Obviously, this is very personal for me, for a lot of us watching as a black man. But I run outside of my neighborhood every day, and so when I saw this story initially, I thought this could have been me. In any of the instances and circumstances where there's an interaction with a black man and people who decide to kill a black man with a weapon or with force without cause, this is something I thought this could really happen to me on a regular basis. So I support the fact that the feds are going after this in a hate crime. My concern, though, is with this Georgia law, and the feds have to come at this right and tight, to use the phrase. They've got to make sure that they've got everything in line, that they don't make any mistakes, because as a lawyer for the defendant, they've already laid out their case. They're going to say Georgia law allows these people to do what they did, and as a result, they should be able to commit the actions that they committed. Again, I think that's wrong. I think they are wrong, but the feds have to be right about it in order to get it right.
I have a feeling Merrick Garland is not putting it all on the line on this if he doesn't have a pretty strong case. If they can prove that, you know, race was a factor and there are reports that the N-word was hurled around in this incident, then they could make this case. The Congress just passed the, you know, Asian hate, anti-hate crime bill. So maybe we are going to start seeing the hate crime statutes being used more effectively to shut down some of these cases. Of course, these charges are in addition to the state charges, and these men are facing murder and other charges. Of course, they pled not guilty. Ed, what are your thoughts about the state and federal charges coming down at the same time, and what this hate crime scenario means for the future of justice, particularly in these type of cases?
I think this is important. I mean, you know, especially where it pertains to particularly civilian interactions, right? You know, in this case, you have, you know, three guys that stopped Ahmaud Arbery and end up resulting in his death. That you know, the story and the facts as those are come out in the discovery, and I think some of the background that we get about the three individuals is going to be really important to sort of shape how this narrative unfolds. You're going to hear the defense, you're going to hear what the prosecution has, but I think it is aggressive by the Attorney General and the federal prosecutors to go this route. I do worry that if they're not successful, that they make it more difficult to bring hate crimes in the future. But I agree with you in that I do believe that they have a very solid case from the facts and the discovery that they know. I'm anxious to see what comes of it, and then ultimately what the verdict is.
And this, of course, is coming on the heels of the Derek Chauvin conviction. And as I said earlier, we're hearing now that the Justice Department might be bringing similar charges against not just Derek Chauvin, but the other three cops in this case. Alycia, how likely do you think that we'll see a conviction here or in the Chauvin case if we're talking about hate crime charges on the federal level on top of those state charges?
I think it's a very real possibility. Like I always say, elections have consequences because Dr. Oleka, if your orange boy was still in office, none of this would be going down. And with the with Larry, Curly, and Moe, somebody was throwing around the N-word. I don't think it's going to be that difficult to convict them. As far as the police go, I think that the one guy, the biracial guy who was asking questions like, should we turn him on his side, and telling Chauvin he doesn't have a pulse, and Chauvin was like, he stays right here. I think out of the other three, he might get the least. But I still feel like there's going to be consequences for all three of those guys. And it's a new day. Like you said, Merrick Garland is ready for the task. He's up for the task. And I don't think they're going to go forward with something they don't think they have a great shot at winning. And I'm pretty optimistic that everybody will be held accountable on the federal level at this point.
Yeah, and we've seen these charges starting to pop up in cities. In New York, a man in Harlem was charged for a hate crime against an Asian American. And in Los Angeles, a Armenian guy attacked a Turkish family, and these charges are being brought. So maybe the hate crime thing is going to be a tool that we'll see used more often. On Monday, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio announced the city's partnership with Thrive NYC to expand a pilot program that sends social workers and EMF staff to nonviolent mental health emergencies instead of cops. What difference is this going to make? Of course, it removes the use of lethal force from the equation if social workers and EMS staff go. But if they're not culturally competent, Is that going to make a difference, Ed?
Well, yes. I mean, first things first, and you hit the key point. It removes the lethal from the equation, which I think is the initial goal. A lot of the interactions with those in distress shouldn't end up with the person in distress dead. And that tends to happen when you have armed response by law enforcement. So removing them from the equation is a good thing. Now, as you start to develop the program, and there's history in the program, we talk about this with law enforcement officers all the time. There's ample dollars for training for law enforcement. There will be ample dollars for training for health professionals to respond.
Oh, and Dominique, I wanted to say one more thing about the Ahmaud Arbery situation. There was no proof that he was in the commission of a burglary. So it's like their whole, the premise of their whole argument is faulty. The man was not committing a crime when they attacked him. He was simply jogging.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I guess it wouldn't apply retroactively, but I believe Georgia has changed the rules around citizen arrests. But OJ Oleka, your thoughts on the switching over to non-armed responses to certain crises?
Well, I'm certainly not opposed to it, again, if it leads to two specific outcomes. If it leads to a reduction in lethal force when it's unnecessary, but also if it doesn't create an uptick in violence against police. I realize that it might be an unpopular opinion, but I think we need police officers to do their job well and to do it effectively where it doesn't harm the Black community and to make sure that they are keeping the public safe. And so if you remove them from the equation, you have to make sure, one, that there isn't unnecessary lethal force, but two, you don't have an increase in an uptick in violence against the police.
Why would there be an uptick if they're not on the scene? I mean, if they're not on the scene responding to the call, how could they be getting violence against them?
Well, when I say police, I mean people who might respond initially. So in this regard,
those EMS workers.
EMS workers. So if you have, in theory, to kind of explain the case,
an uptick in violence against the responders. But most of the time, when we see these autistic people or mentally ill people being shot and killed, most of the time, if I read an article today, it said something like 95% of the time they are unarmed, and the infractions are pretty minor. Alycia, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like the gentleman who called about his brother and somebody mentioned a gun, but when he was clearly and like to me, he seemed like he was having some sort of a breakdown and he got shot and they said he was only holding a cordless phone. So these types of instances wouldn't exist if somebody showed up without lethal force as an option. So I think that's great. Just like cops know how to use hostage negotiators when they need to use them, they should also utilize other professionals for mental health calls.
Soulmates are on fire tonight. I love it. TT on YouTube says Ed is fine. Kim Possible says this case is disgusting and so many things have happened in a year. I almost forgot about this. In COG on YouTube, this has been a long time coming, but I hope they successfully bring forth a case that leads to a conviction. Thank you so much, Soulmates. Remember, you can weigh in too on YouTube. Kamala Harris is pledging her support for Black women all over the United States who are not being heard by medical professionals and are losing their lives because of it. Vice President Harris went on to speak about implicit bias in the medical field and how it contributes to a large number of fatalities in Black women who are pregnant. She stated, "I've heard countless stories of women telling their doctors they were experiencing pain only to be ignored." She wrote stories of women trying to talk about their postpartum depression only to be dismissed and sent home. Yeah. In the medical field, implicit bias is why Black women can speak up and still not be heard. Most of us have personal stories about this. Great to see this spotlighted. Is this going to make a difference, Alycia?
I hope it's going to make a difference. And yeah, statistics have shown that they think that Black women have higher pain thresholds. They don't believe us when we tell them something that's going on with us. And it's gone on for far too long. I'm just so glad that a light is being shown on what's really been happening in the medical profession for African-American women. We have the highest rates of everything negative, and it's well overdue that they take this seriously and do something about it.
And OJ, you're a dad, and of course you're a son, and this seems right on target for the type of work that your organization does. Are you on board with what the vice president is talking about here?
It is right on target for the work that we do, and I do agree with the vice president on this. And again, this is the power of having a vice president who identifies as a black woman. You can bring these issues to the forefront, you can bring these issues to light with significant credibility, even if she doesn't necessarily fit in the boat of a black mother, quote unquote. She can speak to the importance of having a black woman being listened to. And in fact, with our organization, this is exactly in league with a type of bill that we push to get passed in Kentucky. It is important, obviously, that you promote and support black women when they are giving birth, particularly if you're talking about maternal mortality. And look, as a Republican, as a believer in the pro-life movement, these women are giving birth to life. They, in fact, have lives. And so you have to value them, and you have to be pro-black women if you want to be pro-life all the way around. So I support this 100%. And I'm happy that the vice president is using her platform to push this issue.
I see how you slid that little dig in at the vice president, but stepmamas are mamas too. I'm a stepmama and a mama, and I'm gonna stand up for the stepmommies. Stepmommies are mamas too. And also, Kamala Harris has cousins, and she's got sisters with kids, and she's got a mama. So, I think that's a little disingenuous. Ed, your thoughts?
Yeah, that was cold, OJ. But I think ultimately the issue that she raises is another conversation piece for this country. These stats lead you to believe that the medical industry treats African American women with sort of the take 2 aspirin and good luck delivering your baby approach. And the mortality rates, are alarming when you start to look at the difference between African American mortality rates during pregnancy and among other ethnicities. And that's a serious issue because we're talking about one of the more vulnerable points in a woman's life, right? Delivering a child, generally you take it for granted, but this isn't something that you should take for granted. You need prenatal care and you need effective medical care throughout the process of the pregnancy. And it's clear that Black women aren't getting that. And it's across the board. It's not one state over the other. And that's why this has to be a federal issue. And so really happy that the vice president has raised this.
You see, I'm wearing my pearls. I'm not an AKA, but I'm wearing my pearls in solidarity with the vice president tonight. Look, is America a racist country? That has got Twitter and every place on fire. We'll talk about it when we get back on the Tammi Mack Late Show. Welcome back, TGIF. In Republican news, Senator Tim Scott delivered the official GOP response to President Biden's address to Congress. Here's what he had to say.
Nowhere do we need common ground more desperately than in our discussion. I have experienced the pain of discrimination. I know what it feels like to be pulled over for no reason, to be followed around the store while I'm shopping. 100 years ago, kids in classrooms were taught the color of their skin was their most important characteristic. And if they looked a certain way, they were inferior. Today, kids are being taught that the color of their skin defines them again. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country.
Okay, America's not a racist country. Is he right, Alicia?
He just sat there naming a bunch of racist shit and then turned around and said America is not a racist country. What part of the game is this? Tim Scott, Lord have mercy. The bottom line is he's a trumpeter. Trump is going to back him in everything he does. So a lot of that stuff to me was made for a party of one. He was speaking to Donald Trump. We all know what it is. You can't say that you've experienced all this racism, but there's no that America is not a racist country. At the end of the day, just say what it is. It is a racist country. It hasn't lived up to its ideals yet. We're supposed to be in the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Black folks are still at life. And we're hoping that we're going to get better. We're trying every day. We're trying to come up with better policies. We're trying to do better and be better. But at this time, we have not achieved it. But to sit up there and discount the experiences of so many millions of Americans is actually offensive.
Well, it's interesting because I think that if Donald Trump does run in 2024, there is an opening in the vice presidential slot. So maybe he's auditioning for that spot.
That's what he's doing.
Oleka, is America a racist country?
Well, first, I don't think Senator Tim Scott is auditioning for anything. I think he's making a very clear vision on what he thinks this country is and what it ought to be. His entire speech, all 15 minutes, was an alternative to what President Biden is offering. And look, is America a racist country? The way that I think that I would outline this is that no, that it's not. Now, is racism a key and unfortunate aspect of what happens for a lot of Black Americans? Without question. I would not question that. In fact, I started an organization, a coalition that in fact called that to light. But the reality is this. If you are Black in this country and you have access to opportunity and you don't have a government or a business or something holding you back, you can succeed the same way anybody else can. And that was the point that Senator Scott was making, that our original sin of slavery should not be the focus in the only place where we exist as a country. So he was looking forward. He was trying to be positive. And quite frankly, a lot of people across the spectrum agreed with him, Black folks, white folks, and people in between in terms of race and ethnicity. And that's a good thing. We need a hopeful vision for the country. And Senator Scott provided us one.
Absolutely, we need a hopeful vision for the country, but isn't it ahistorical to say we're not a racist country when we were built on the extermination of indigenous Native American Indians, the enslavement of African people, and that racism and white supremacy through the Jim Crow era is still baked in the cake in many of our institutions of education, finance, and in other areas through systemic racism? I mean, isn't it kind of ahistorical to say, oh, well, let's look forward and pretend none of that exists?
Well, again, to be clear about what he said America is not a racist country. He didn't say America has never been. He didn't say America was founded as a country without it.
Okay.
Well, I think it is an important distinction to make, and I recognize that reasonable people can hear that and assume what you said, that he's saying that it never was.
But it still is. I mean, systemic racism. Okay, I don't want to take up all the time. Ed, Kamala Harris, our vice president, also mentioned that America is not a racist country. She's not getting the same kind of pushback as Senator Scott. Why so?
Well, no, I'm actually seeing a lot of pushback on her for that. I think the statement is a goal, right? With regards to Senator Scott, I would actually ask the question: what is the date? What date did America not become a racist, country? Because we need to make that a national holiday and celebrate that for a month. And that's what's laughable about this. I mean, his presence in giving the counter speech to Biden is rooted in him being Black. The Republican Party is pushing back on the conversation, this introspective conversation that the country is having. It's being led by the Democratic Party. It's being led by the president, the vice president, and the leadership in the Senate and House. And the Republicans are pushing back on it. And what they've done is they've asked their lone Black elected senator, to lead the conversation and make it okay for everyone else. If he says that racism doesn't exist, that this country isn't racist, that is just cues and dog whistles for others to just take it and run with it, so that they don't have to have this introspective conversation about institutional racism. And Dominique, you pointed it out, and it's absolutely right. When you look from slavery to Jim Crow, all the way through the civil rights, a lot of this is baked already into American society, culture, our laws, and our institutions. And unpacking that is an important part of the conversation now.
Dominique, I have to offer a response to that, because that's simply not true. To say Democrats are leading the conversation with regard to race and racial reconciliation is an untruth. Senator Tim Scott himself, years ago, led a conversation based on his testimony on the Senate floor about his experience as a Black man. That's incredibly important, and the fact that he did it as a Republican matters significantly. Again, you have folks like myself and then people all across the country who are leading this effort within their respective states. So to make this conversation about race and race reconciliation as a partisan one, I think is flat out wrong. Also, I think it's important to point out that when Senator Scott and other people say that America is not a racist country, what they are saying is that, yes, we have certainly had a history of racism, of racial discrimination. It exists within institutions today, but there is a point to be hopeful. And I would take the opposite perspective of what Ed has offered, is that there are people all across this country, white Americans in particular, who want our country to be better, but they don't have the language, they don't have the skills by themselves. And so they need to hear from someone like Senator Tim Scott, who might share their values on other issues, to say, look, we have a lot of warts, a lot of wrong things on race, but we are not a racist country in the sense that we want to be better. That is an important message that people need to hear.
I think we also have to consider the fact that Tim Scott teed up a clear setup for Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris to say some things that could be used in campaign ads in 22 and 24. Republicans want to say that Democrats hate America. And that is why the vice president would never say that this is a racist country, even though it is, because she's not going to take the bait. She did it very gracefully. She walked the line. We're not a racist country, but we have to address our history of racism. I thought she was pitch perfect on that, and she avoided a clear minefield that was set there by Republicans in that response. Let's talk about a prime example of racism in America, or two Americas. Andrew Brown Jr. fatally shot in the back of the head by North Carolina police as he was driving away. Meanwhile, Luke Alton Bruns assaulted a retail worker, rammed into a police car, hit a cop on the head with a hammer, and he was arrested without incident. Are people in denial about racism in this country, Dr. Oleka? Let's give short answers because we're almost out of time here.
Well, quickly, I mean, the way that you outline this story, this in fact is a problem with racism. You murder a black man for an incident, and you take in a white man who tried to assault cops peacefully. That's a problem.
Ed, your thoughts?
You know, I think Doc OJ said it as succinctly as you can, but the proof is there. You've got two very different outcomes on a scenario, and what's clear is race seems to be the difference there.
And Alycia, it seems like we see this over and over again. I mean, we heard a lot about Dylan Roof being taken into custody and getting a burger, and Adam Toledo shot on site. What are your thoughts?
Whenever I see a story like this, the first thing I think is I want somebody to sit down and interview the cop or cops who didn't shoot the guy while cracking him in the head with a hammer. And I want him to explain to me now, why didn't he get two to the chest? Like, I really just need an answer from the guys who were involved in this shooting. What made you spare his life in that moment? Because it doesn't seem to work the other way around. Maybe there's a teachable moment here, because I want to hear from the cops. What was going through your mind that you said, I'll let him kill me, but I won't kill him? Why was that your decision? You always some of these split-second decisions. You made a decision not to kill him, and I wanted to talk to the cops about why that decision was made. And if he looked different than that man, would you have made the same decision?
Yeah, I think it's a valid point. I mean, these are the questions that are raised when we talk about disparate treatment and what do we do about it. And one of the reasons why I feel very hopeful that we're starting to see the hate crime statutes being used, whether it's Stop Asian Hate or whether it's these disparate treatments of different groups of people, the same training yielding different results. What is that? When we get back, we'll have something for you to liven up your Friday night, a little upbeat story to send you on your way about your weekend with your mask on or your mask off. Stay right here. It is Friday, so let's end on a positive note. Power Couple Sierra and Russell Wilson Power Couple, encouraging young students to learn about the importance of financial literacy and how to save and invest their own money. On Tuesday, the couple surprised Denny International Middle School with a virtual visit and gifted nearly every student with $40 in a savings account. That's seed money. 900 kids got $40 in their savings. They talked about the importance of teaching kids about building financial wealth. Ed, you've got some kids of your own. How important is this? How inspiring is this?
Oh, I love this story. I mean, first things first, for NFL quarterback, a recording artist to use their platforms in the city where they live. They're incredibly popular in Seattle. But to inspire youth to learn about financial literacy, I couldn't applaud them more. That as you think about some of the schooling that we grew up with, financial literacy is something that you learned either in your family or you had to pursue it. And so where programs like this can be brought forward, I'm all for it and applaud it.
Yep, as the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad famously pointed out, it's not part of school curriculum, even in college. Your response to this, Dr. Oleka?
Well, it actually is now part of curriculum in Kentucky, thanks to a bill that I helped sponsor. So again, a shameless plug there, but it is incredibly important. And the fact that they would put some $40,000 to making sure that students could understand the importance of financial literacy, is key. I mean, when students and when people have a bank account, when they have the resources to save, it teaches them the importance of how money works and how money moves. And if you're thinking about the long-term impacts of ending generational poverty, this is an aspect of it. So I absolutely applaud them for the work that they're doing.
Yeah, we talk about building generational wealth all the time. And if we ever get those reparations, which it looks like we will, it'd be great if people knew how to invest, how to save, and how to manage their money for maximum impact. Alycia, your thoughts on this?
Yes, I think the financial literacy thing early on is amazing. You know, we didn't have that in any school that I went to. I wish we did. My first professional job out of college was at BT. I had a chance in Washington, D.C. I had a chance to buy BT stock and have them take some out of my check. And I didn't understand the value. And I was like, oh, my check is already small. Looking back on it, I wish I had put at least $20 a pay period into that, because a couple of years later, the BT stock split. I had no idea what stock was, no idea why I should try to peel off a little bit of my check and invest it in that way. I didn't have any prior knowledge. And I hope that nowadays, with these different classes and people being different, educated in a different way, that they'll see what the benefits are. And as you guys know, we heard that Barbara Streisand gave Disney stock to George Floyd's daughter. This is the kind of stuff that we need to know about, research, learn, understand. Russell and Sierra, they are the GOAT couple. You know, I hope that they're inspirational people, that you don't need the thug guy. You can get the committal guy and have a great relationship.
Well, I want to thank my Friday co-host, Ed Sanders, Dr. O.J. Oleka, and Alycia Cooper for joining us. And thank you for watching us on YouTube. Tammi will be back on Monday, and I'll see you again next Friday. Bye, y'all.